billion in revenue just last year. And now she's out with her first novel called Fashion Jungle that pulls the curtain back on the industry that gave her her big break. Please welcome the legendary Kathy Ireland. Goals on top of goals.
Oh my goodness.
Beautiful. And you hit the twirl and you came out the door. This is incredible. It's incredible. When you look back at it, is it surreal, everything that you've accomplished from modeling to the business world for you?
Yes, it is. I feel extremely blessed. I work with some extraordinary people, and it's been a journey.
Yeah.
It most certainly has. You know, I think back 40 years ago when I first came to New York as a model, and you know, a lot has happened since then.
Absolutely. And in that journey, the newest part of this is the novel. And I'm curious, when I first received the book, I thought, okay, this will be a memoir. And then, wait a minute, it's a novel.
It's a novel.
It's a novel inspired by
Kiki, good
things
down.
you experienced and things you saw?
Yes. And I
Kicks.
never dreamed that I would write fiction. It was never part of my plan. A colleague introduced me to Rachel Van Dyken, who I believe is
here.
To... Rachel, okay, I have to give you a hug. And the amazing
It's like a family reunion on the show.
Okay.
Why was it a special moment for you? Because here's why I ask you that. We're really into women uplifting other women and women helping other women on this journey. So it's clear she was a big part of that for you.
Oh, I would not have written this book without Rachel. So a colleague introduced us, and I was sharing stories from my experience, roommates, friends in the industry. And as I was sharing, Rachel just started weeping, and there were certain aspects that made me angry.
Yeah.
And I quickly learned from Rachel. I learned to trust her, and that she's a New York Times #1 best-selling author, and she has the ability to weave the stories and build these characters.
We were just talking about therapy, and a writer who said, listen, I don't want to date anyone who doesn't go to therapy. Was this like therapy for you? Because again, these are 4 fictional characters, but clearly for there to be tears while she was writing this, you were unloading and revealing a lot, which included men in the industry. Well before the name Me Too, you were a young woman in this industry that preys upon or can prey upon young women.
Yes, and it was in many ways. I think the most encouraging aspect of this book is that, yes, it's romance, it's a thriller, there's political intrigue. It's also a cautionary tale, and it's about these 4 women, this tribe, and their closeness. You were talking about like the bonds of women, and they survive the jungle, and they make mistakes along the way. There's a lot, and who hasn't? I mean, who of us hasn't? But there's hope. There's a lot of hope, and the message that Rachel and I want to convey to the readers is whatever sector of life and business you're in, whether it's modeling, entertainment, whether you work in agriculture or finance, whatever it is, know your value.
Yeah.
Put boundaries in place to protect yourself, because those values will be challenged.
I was looking at the book, and I was like, okay, is Brittany Kathy? I'm trying to figure out which one of these women, and I came to the conclusion that they were all pieces of you. In some way, I'm sure. And whether it's the confidence or it's the need to have the confidence to build up. I know you've been open about, in the business, photographers, or in particular, a photographer preying upon you. Why is it important to convey these stories today?
I think it's important for people to, approach life in general with our eyes wide open. And particularly in the fashion industry, so much of it, it's retouched images, those glossy magazine covers. And frequently young women and men will come to me, I want to be a model. And and sometimes I feel like I'm the killjoy, but I'm.
And what do you tell them
Well,
when they say that?
I'm giving them caution. It's like, oh, go approach it with your eyes wide open.
But you're 16. You're in New York for the first time. Someone says there was a photographer in the news recently. He was using his celebrity connections to convince young girls to send pictures to him, DM him, and he'd say, "Well, listen, if this is what you want, then you need to send me something."
Right.
And they take advantage of the vulnerable.
Yes. It's when I worked in that industry, I mean, it was eye-opening. I entered it thinking that adults were all good people like my parents, and it was shocking. Of course, I met some wonderful people, but there's some gnarly people and situations as well. So it's important to be alert, to be aware, to protect yourself, and not to compromise. If anybody tells you that, if anybody says you have to do this, don't compromise. Know what you're willing to walk away from.
Absolutely. And to your point, listen, we can look at the dark side of any industry, but the reality is, without this industry, we wouldn't know Kathy Ireland, and you would not have been able to turn it into this empire that you eventually were able to put together. It gave you that shot at life.
I'm very grateful. It was a wonderful education. It wasn't part of my plan, but it ended up being a great education.
Well, we're going to stick around with Kathy because we're going to talk more about her multi-million-dollar business, how she knew how to turn it all from modeling to where she is now, which is, as I said, #goals. When we come right back, more with the conversation of legendary Kathy Ireland.